Hi, welcome back to my channel. For those who don't know me, my name is Katharine, and this is my daughter Lucy. She's a tuxedo cat. She'll be joining in on today's video today, and I'm going to be talking about my favorite booktubers. So this is going to be a non-exhaustive list. So of course, there's always going to be new booktubers that I'm going to discover and like watching their content. So I might do like an updated list maybe like a year or two in the future, just so that I can give my most recent channels that I like watching. But I wanted to just give my most recent list right now, just so that you can discover new booktubers that you could possibly watch in the future. I know that when I was just discovering booktube and bookstagram and book talk, all of the book content social media platforms, it was really hard for me to discover who to watch and who to listen to, because at the time I was just listening to anything and everyone, not really knowing what my book taste was. And now that I know more of what my book tastes are, I'm more selective of who I watch and subscribe to and follow. And also, this is like not going to be a list for everyone. I know that because for the past few months I have made a huge major switch from reading mostly mainstream secular fiction to mostly Christian fiction, and that will be reflected in this video. A lot of the booktubers that I'm going to list in this video are Christian booktubers. There are some in here that are not Christian booktubers, and I will mention that in the description of their channels. But for the most part, a lot of them are Christian booktubers. I should also say that I'm not just reading Christian fiction now. I'm mostly reading it now, but I will occasionally read mainstream secular fiction every once in a while. I've read, the Harry Potter series, and I'm currently reading the Outlander series by Diana Gabaldon. So there are exceptions to the rule of like me reading secular mainstream fiction books, but I'm mostly reading Christian fiction now. But anyway, let's just get into this. I didn't select like a top 10 or a top 25 because I can't really pick favorites, and I also follow a lot of booktubers that are more than 10 or 25, so I just made a collective list of all of the ones that I subscribe or followed, and I just put it in one big list. And I didn't really count how many there are, but I will make sure to link all of the channels down below in the description. So let's just get into this. I'll try to make this as quick as possible because I know there's a lot of people that I'm going to be listing here. But anyways, the first person on this list is the first Christian booktuber that I ever discovered. Her name is Oshina from Oshina Gotta Catch 'Em All. Not Gotta Catch 'Em All. Oshina from Oshina Gotta Read 'Em All. And she mostly reads Christian contemporary romance and just clean fiction in general. She does read other secular fiction books, but she likes to have them clean. I also watch Lindsay from BFCG, Books for Christian Girls, and she creates videos for Christian and clean fiction books, and she mostly focuses on books that are geared towards girls ages 9 to 19. So you'll find a lot of like great Christian young adult books from her, but she also does a lot of other Christian fiction as well, not just for girls but for adults as well, but she mainly focuses on young girls from ages 9 to 19. Then there's Kate Howe, and she reads a lot of classics, Christian books, and also children's books and mysteries. She is a mom, so that's why she reads a lot of children's books, and she, I believe, homeschools too. So if you're a homeschool mom, definitely go check her out. I'm not a homeschool mom. I'm not even a mom in general, but I do like watching her content. And then there's Book Chats with Pat. She's not a Christian booktuber. She is just a retired English teacher, and she recommends a lot of contemporary fiction, classics, poetry, and nonfiction. The reason why I like watching her is because it feels like I'm just like in an English class, and English was one of my favorite subjects in school, and I just find her videos like very relaxing, and it also just reminds me how much I should be reading like books that have made a big impact on our society. So definitely go check her out. And then the next person I want to recommend is Alma from Alma's Book Journey. She reads a lot of Christian and clean fiction, and from just watching her videos, she tends to like a lot of historical books as well. I love her library book hauls or book trips. She goes to a lot of library sales, and then she goes to a lot of little free libraries too. She'll do like little free library or free little library. I always get the two words mixed up, but whatever those free little libraries are, or those little free libraries, whatever order it goes in, she does a lot of those types of trips, and I always enjoy watching those types of videos from her. I also want to recommend Lou from Christian Faith and Fiction. She's from England, and I love her accent. It's honestly so relaxing to me listening to her accent, and it just honestly makes her sound like very smart, and I bet she is very smart. But anyway, she, of course, by the title of her channel, reads a lot of Christian fiction, and she also reads a lot of Christian nonfiction as well. I always love listening to her recommendations. She does like a scale of like how much Christian fiction content is in books, and I always appreciate that. And then the next person is Sarah's Tangled Tales, and she reads a lot of Christian and clean fiction, and she really likes fantasy. She's a really big fan of this Christian fantasy series called the Ilion Chronicles. I think that's how you pronounce it. And I am inspired to read it because that's like one of her favorite series of all time. And also, my favorite Disney princess is Rapunzel as well, so we have that in common. And I also want Flynn Rider as my boyfriend or husband. He is like the ultimate. I also have Bethany from Bethany's Bookshelf. She's mostly a clean fiction and Christian fiction reader, and I feel like she has a lot of similar tastes to me, and I always enjoy her recommendations because I feel like if she likes certain books, then I'm gonna like them. I also have Gloria Z. Thompson. She also reads a lot of Christian and clean fiction books. I also have Read and Knit with Cheryl. She mostly reads Christian fiction, but she also reads some secular mainstream fiction as well. I know she's a big fan of the Sarah J. Maas series of, not A Court of Thorns and Roses, but what's the other one? Oh, it's the Throne of Glass series. That's what she really likes. I also discovered Molly Popplewell. I think that's how you pronounce her last name. Sorry, Molly, if I pronounced that wrong. But she's also from England. Love her accent. Literally, she sounds so smart. But anyway, she reads a lot of Christian and clean fiction. She is a new booktuber, so definitely go check her out. And then the next person is the Old American Spirit, and she goes by the nickname of your clean fiction book buddy. And she, of course, reads a lot of clean romances, Christian fiction, classics, and middle grades. And then the next up is Alicia from For the Love of Christian Fiction. She reads a lot of Christian and clean romances, but mostly it's contemporary. I also want to recommend Jeanette from Jane Reads. She is from Canada, but I believe her parents are from England, so if you are second generation English, you're also very smart in my eyes. But she reads a lot of Christian fiction, and she also particularly likes Christian romantic suspense. Then there's Wendy from Wendy's Inspired Reads, and she reads like a variety of Christian fiction and also mainstream secular fiction. And then there's Book Lover Amanda. She's another one that I discovered in the Christian booktube realm pretty early on in my Christian fiction booktube journey, and she's hilarious. She's from the South, I think Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken. Love her accent. She's hilarious and she's so funny. But anyway, go check her out. She reads a lot of Christian fiction, like a variety of Christian fiction. And then there's Mitzi Reads and Writes, and she loves classics and like vintage reads, and she is from Georgia, and much like Book Lover Amanda, she has this accent that I just love. And then there's Woldenburn Reads, I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't believe she's a Christian fiction booktuber, but she just reads mainly vintage and historical books. And then there's Miriam Elizabeth Reads, and she reads a lot of Christian fiction and classics, and she likes mysteries and historical and fantasy books as well. And then there's Chantel Reads All Day, and she reads a lot of Christian fiction, classics, and middle grade. I think she also homeschools, and she's a pastor's wife if I'm not mistaken. So she does read a lot of like books that her kids would read as well. Then there's Anne with In Search of Wonder, and she reads a lot of classics and Christian fiction, and she knows a lot about coffee, apparently, from what she describes in her videos, and I want her to make me some coffee one day, because whenever she has coffee, like, while she's drinking it in her videos, like, it looks delicious, and I want her to make me one day. And then there's Tiffany with Beautiful Minutia. I think that's how you pronounce her channel name. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But she reads a lot of classics and Christian fiction, and I think she's also a teacher, so she reads a lot of books that she would also teach in her classes. Then there's Tales and Treats with Tay, and she reads a lot of Christian and clean fiction. And then there's Morgan's Endless Bookshelf, and whenever I see her pop up on my YouTube, I immediately think of C.S. Lewis and Narnia, but she's obsessed with that. But anyway, she reviews a lot of Christian fiction books along with clean fiction. Then there's Keen Cat, and she's actually a nanny, so she reads a lot of kids' books, but she also reads Christian fiction as well. Then there's Tammy with Believe in Your Shelf, and she basically reads a variety of fiction books. She first was discovered by me when she made some videos with her mom and dad and like their book recommendations, and I just thought that was like such a cute video idea to do, and I've been watching her videos ever since. And there's Katie with Paperbacks and Ponytails, and she reads a lot of Christian and clean fiction, and I believe she's also in the process of writing a book, and I can't wait for it to come out so that I can read it. And then there's Kat's Stories, and she reads a lot of Christian and clean fiction as well. And then there's Lexi Between the Lines, and she reads a variety of Christian fiction and mainstream secular fiction. And then there's Book Nerd K-Tree, I think that's how you pronounce it, and she reads a lot of clean romances, mysteries, classics, and Christian nonfiction. And then there's Ashlyn Kaylee, and she reads mostly mainstream secular fiction, but she is a Christian and she tries to read a lot of clean mainstream fiction. And then next up on the list is Ian Gubelli, I think that's how you pronounce his name, but he is Ashlyn's husband, and he also reads a variety of secular fiction, and he's a big fan of Stephen King. I don't know if I'll ever read a Stephen King. I'm not a big fan of horror, but he's a big fan apparently. And he's a Christian as well. So I'm not saying Christians can't read horror, but like I am just not a big fan of it myself. I get scared very easily. And then there's Lizzie Faye Loves Books, and she reads a lot of cozy mysteries, Christian fiction, and middle grade. And then there's Chrissy's Purple Library. She's also hilarious. I love her. She's so cute. She reads a lot of Christian fiction, And then there's Lauren with intuitive reading. She also reads Christian fiction. And then there's Amy Marie, and she reads a lot of mystery and thriller books. She's a huge fan of Scooby-Doo, so she of course reads a lot of books similar to that, and I love watching her videos. They're just like so cozy. And then there's Paige with God's Brown-Eyed Girl, and she reads a lot of Christian fiction, along with Caroline Williams, who reads clean fiction, and then Faith with Faith in Books, who reads a lot of classics and a variety of other books as well. There's Jess with Pages in Grace, who reads a lot of Christian fiction and a variety of other like secular fiction. Then there's Jamie with the Canson Reader. I think that's how you pronounce her channel name. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm probably butchering like all of these channel names at this point, but she reads a lot of Christian fiction and some secular fiction. And then there's the writing Songbird. I don't know what your first name is, I'm sorry, but she reads a lot of Christian and clean fiction, and she really likes fantasy as well. And there's also Celestria, who they both remind me of each other, and Celestria also reads a lot of Christian fiction and clean fiction, and she also likes fantasy. And then there's Courtney, reads a lot, and she reads a lot of Christian fiction. There's Caitlin with Chronicles of a Book Nerd, and she reads a lot of Christian romance. There's Carmen Janae, and she reads a lot of Christian fiction, nonfiction, junior and middle grade, memoirs, biographies, true stories, and classics. She's very well read, okay. And then there's Manny Maltz, I think that's how you pronounce her last name. She reads a lot of Christian homeschool, like materials, so if you're like a Christian homeschooling mom, definitely go check her out. But she also has a lot of like Christian fiction content as well, along with the homeschooling stuff. And then there's Whitney's reading journey. She reads a lot of Christian fiction. There's Best Bookish Reviews, and she is a 6th grade history teacher actually, and she reads a lot of Christian fiction and classics. There's the Lucy Chronicles, and she reads a lot of Christian and clean fiction. There's Cheryl with the Candlewick Library, and she reads Christian fiction, along with Ashley Ray and also Alicia Schulz. There's Mercedes with Beautiful Books, and she reads a lot of Christian fiction, fantasy, young adult, classics, thrillers, and nonfiction. Another very well-read person. And then there's Tawny's Bookshelf. That's what I'm trying to say. And she posts a lot of YouTube shorts about Christian fiction. And then there's Marissa with Blatantly Bookish, and she reads mostly classics. There's also Harm's Honey, who she posts a lot about Christian fiction, but also a lot of other mainstream secular fiction as well. There's Sam with The Book Bunch, and she reads a lot of Christian-friendly fantasy, sci-fi, and other types of books as well. There's Teresa with Sweet Tea Reads, and she reads fantasy, mystery, thriller, suspense, nonfiction, biblical fiction, and Christian fiction. Very well read as well. There's Stephanie's Books and Looks. She reads Christian fiction and nonfiction. And Rosanna Marr also reads a lot of Christian fiction and nonfiction. There's also Katharine with Read, Journal, Love. She reads Christian fiction and nonfiction and also classics. There's Rachel Reads, who reads Christian fiction. That was a mouthful for me. There's also Naomi's Bookshelf, who reads classics and Christian fiction. There's Lauren Jean, I think, or Jean? Laura Jean. I think that's how, no. Lauren Jean, if I can speak English today. And she reads a lot of classics, Christian fiction, nonfiction, and a variety of other secular fiction. There's Jenny Gossel, and she's a Christian who reads a lot of classics and fantasies. There's Jana Van Morik, and she reads a lot of Christian and biblical fiction. There's also Hope with Hopefully Books. I love the pun for the name. And she reads a lot of Christian fiction and nonfiction and also some fantasy. There's Samantha with Faith in Books, and she reads a lot of Christian and clean fiction. There's also M's Books Are Everywhere, and she reads a lot of cozy mysteries, vintage reads, and she's also a big fan of Agatha Christie. I have not read any Agatha Christie yet, and I really want to sometime soon. There's also Daughter of Increase. I couldn't get your name correctly, so I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, but if you can like put the pronunciation in the comments below, I would really appreciate that so that I can get your name right. But she does a lot of Bible studies and book reviews of like Christian books. And then there's Book Talks with Mrs. Thomas. I love her. She comments on my YouTube like all the time, and she's just like a wonderful person. She's actually a teacher, and she reads a lot of Christian fiction and a variety of other books as well. I also have Bethany Brings Books. She reads a lot of Christian fiction. There's Allison Garcia, and she does a lot of lifestyle videos like Days in the Life. And also she reads a lot of Christian and secular fiction. There's Keisha with A Book Like You, and she reads a lot of clean and Christian books. There's Wandering with Stacy, and she reads a lot of Christian fiction, nonfiction, classics, mysteries, and thrillers. There's Courtney with All Things Booked, and she reads a lot of clean and Christian fiction. There's Christy A. Cole, and she reads also clean and Christian fiction. And then there's Charlene with Coffee and a Book. Me and her, follow each other on Instagram and subscribe to each other on YouTube. She is always very awesome to watch. I enjoy seeing her videos every time they pop up on my YouTube recommended list. And she reads a lot of Christian fiction, classics, mysteries, fantasy, and sci-fi. And last but certainly not least is Jake with Read Instead. I actually know him in person. He goes to my church, and we both started YouTube channels like around the similar time period of last year, and he, I don't think, identifies as like a Christian fiction reader. Like I think he may have read some like Christian like nonfiction books before, and maybe some Christian fiction books. I'm not too sure. I'm not going to speak for him. But he's a cool dude. He works at the same place that I do for our church, and we're like constantly talking like in person about the books that we're reading, but we have like really different tastes in books. But I do want to recommend him to you. Like he reads a lot of like, I don't even know how to describe it. He just reads a lot of like masculine, like manly books. You know what I mean? Like not that that's anything wrong, like he is a guy, so like you do you, Jake, but like I personally don't enjoy or tend to enjoy a lot of the books that he's reading. Occasionally he'll post a video of like a book review that I'm like, oh wow, that's actually something that sounds interesting to me. I'm gonna have to check it out. But for like the most part, like we have kind of like differing like book tastes, but like occasionally like I'll like see a book that he recommends that I'm like, oh, actually I'm gonna add that to my TBR. But that's all of the booktubers that I want to recommend to you today. It's a little bit of a longer video. I didn't expect it to go on for this long, and my battery on my camera is about to die, and I'm almost at like the 30-minute mark in terms of filming. I don't know how long it's going to be after I'm done editing, but my camera likes to turn off after like 30 minutes of me filming. I don't know why. But anyways, I'm going to wrap it up here. I hope this gave you some ideas of some booktubers to follow, especially when it comes to like the Christian booktube realm. I know that Katie with Paperbacks and Ponytails did a similar video to this, and it really helps me when I was like trying to discover like Christian fiction booktubers. So hopefully this helped you out as well. Do all the YouTube things that you know how to do, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!